Rabbi Levinger used to be. He doesn't record anymore. He used to record it. He used to be live on YouTube. He does it?
I don't think so.
No, he used to do it. No, he used to do it. Because actually there was a talk, because you can't do two at once on Mayanot's.
Oh.
So then, but he has his own channel.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, he's Rabbi Levinger. Of course he has his own channel. It's got 14 billion viewers. It's amazing. They're all angels in heaven. Okay, we're starting a new mimer, which happens to be Hashgacha Pratis, since we have a few new students for a few days while Rabbi Levinger is gone. If you find it hard to follow along, don't worry. I mean, I'm going to read it and translate everything, so even if the reading is difficult, the translation will be in English. It'll be Canadian English, not American English, so it might be hard to understand, but we'll see. Okay. This is a very, very famous mimer. A mimer that you can see the Rebbe said, Shabbos Pashas Yishlach Tov Kislev, which is Gematria Yud Zayin, 17th of Kislev, Tafshin Mem Vav, 1980. Well, it was 1985, right? Because it had Kislev is not yet January, generally. So our year had changed, and the rest of the world was lagging behind. So it was 1985. Now, what's unique about that? There was a story that summer, and the story was that someone was stealing books from the previous Rebbe's library, and that ultimately went to trial. And this was something extremely painful to the Rebbe and the Rebbe's wife, the Rebbetzin, because the person doing this happened to be related. And it caused great anguish. The Rebbe talked about it quite a bit in Farbrengens, and you could see the pain. The Rebbe was definitely extremely unhappy about the whole thing and pained by the whole thing. The trial started on Yud Tes Kislev, Tafshin Mem Vav. The trial started 2 days later, on Monday. This obviously was Shabbos. The trial started on Monday. So that's a very interesting, first of all, everybody was very excited that the trial was starting on Yud Tes Kislev. That was a positive omen, and that Yud Tes Kislev is such an incredibly powerful and positive day. But and if you don't know what Yud Tes Kislev is, okay, say to hang around Mayanot for a while, and Yud Tes Kislev is coming in a month, and you'll see what Yud Tes Kislev is about. The fact that the trial was starting on that day was seen as very positive, but it was a tense time. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The judge promised to give a quick decision because of the nature of the case. It ultimately took a year because he was assigned to another case very quickly, and I'm pretty sure that case was John Gotti, who was the head of the biggest mafia gang in New York, and they caught him on racketeering. They looked, he was called the Teflon Don because they just couldn't get anything on this guy. I remember the whole story with him. It was very famous. They were trying to they knew it was like Al Capone. They knew who this guy was, right? And they just couldn't get him. He was very smart. They finally got him. So this judge was I believe that was the trial that the judge was given, and so for that reason he obviously didn't have time to work on the decision in this trial, and the decision only came out a year later. Hey Davis, the 5th day of Tavis, Tafshin Mem Zayin, the 5th day of Tavis that was probably January, so that would mean it would be 1987, and that is to this day a day of unbelievable celebration in Lubavitch because we won the trial, Baruch Hashem. The books were ordered returned, and they were. So that's the historical background of this. It's just so interesting that what the Rebbe is going to talk about in this mimer relative to what was going on around. Okay, say them. Now there's 2 mimarim in this mimer. It's a very short little mimer, as you can see. It's 4 pages, not long at all. There's 2 mimarim. The Rebbe asks a question in the first paragraph, continues the question for the first 4 lines of the second paragraph, and then goes into a completely parenthetical discussion for a page and a half, and then comes back to the original mimer. All right? Okay, so that's what's going to happen. Margela defuma deRava. There's something that was common, Margela, from the language ragil. Ragil in Hebrew means something that's common, something that's regular. I assume the English word regular comes from that word. Right? Margela defuma deRava. There was something that was common in the mouth of Rava. Meaning Rava was wont to say the following thing. Tachlis chokhma tshuva maisim tevi. The ultimate expression of chokhmah, wisdom, is tshuva and maisim tevi. Tshuva, we know what that is, and maisim tevi, good deeds, positive deeds. Shenemar, as it says, Reishis chokhmah yiras Hashem. The beginning of chokhmah, so to speak, is yiras Hashem. Seichel tev l'chol oseyim. A good seichel, this is a hard, interesting way of expressing it. Seichel is intellect. A good intellect to all those that do them. So the first expression of wisdom is the fear of God, or awe of God. Seichel tev l'chol oseyim, and a good intellect to all that do them. Now the Medrash continues, the Gemara. It's Gemara in Brachos. The Medrash continues and says, it doesn't say it's a good intellect to those who learn them, because that intellect is generally relative to learning things as opposed to doing things, right? When you use your intellect, you're learning something. You're not doing anything. You're learning, right? Different verb. And yet the verb in the pasuk is doing them. It doesn't say to the ones that learn them, to the ones that do them. Okay, that's the end of Rava's statement. So what did Rava say? The ultimate expression of chokhmah is tshuva, coming close to God, and maisim tevim, positive deeds. Why do we see that? Well, if you look in the pasuk talks about that. They talk about both of them. Reishis chokhmah yiras Hashem, the awe of Hashem, which is obviously tshuva. Seichel tev l'chol oseyim, and it's a good seichel, it's a good intellect. Torah is somehow intellectually good relative to deeds. However we understand that. But that's the maisim tevim, those are the deeds. David? There's copies of them. Okay. That's the end of the Medrash. Those 2.5 lines are the Medrash in the Gemara in Brachos. The time has come.
So it says, Rabbi, Chokhmah is the awe of Hashem.
Yiras Hashem is the awe of Hashem.
Okay.
Fear, awe. It's often translated as fear, but really it's awe.
And what's the other one?
Maisim tevim, good deeds. Good deeds. Getting plates and spoons and forks for people, things like that. Good deeds. Right? Okay, that's the end of the Medrash. V'hainu. So now the Rebbe explains. The mizeh shenemar, from the fact that it says Reishis chokhmah yiras Hashem, that the first expression of wisdom is yiras Hashem, the fear of God or the awe of God. Move on, it's understood that tachlis chokhmah tshuva, that the ultimate expression of chokhmah is tshuva, because we're now trying to understand how Rava learns the two ideas that he says from that pasuk. Well, it's obvious that the fact that the pasuk says Reishis chokhmah is yiras Hashem, well, that means that chokhmah, wisdom, has something to do with yiras Hashem. What's yiras Hashem? Tshuva, coming close to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, developing and enhancing a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Umizeh shenemar seichel tev l'chol oseyim, in the second half of the pasuk of the verse that says seichel tev l'chol oseyim, which is difficult to understand, but all the words are simple, but the connection is interesting. A good intellect to all that do them. Muvan, from that it's understood that there's something about action. Shetachlis chokhmah, that wisdom also is connected to maisim tevim. Shetachlis chokhmah, hu maisim tevim. It's good deeds. Okay. So it's very clear that there's two parts of the pasuk. Rava says two things, and the connection is rather obvious. Okay. Now, we're going to see that this verse does not mean that the ultimate purpose of wisdom, meaning the ultimate purpose of coming to an understanding of what's true and what's not true, is a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu and good deeds. In other words, that the understanding leads to the more powerful relationship with God and good deeds, even though obviously it does, but that's not what the verse means, as we'll see, which is interesting. The Inyan Zen Nemar Befedus, this the Rebbe just continues explaining the connection between things. The Inyan Zen, this idea of Chokhmah being connected to positive deeds, Nemar Befedus B'Kosev is mentioned explicitly in the verse, Seichel Tov L'Chol Oseyim, It's a good seichel for all those that do them, meaning somehow understanding leads to positive deeds. That's what you would think it means. Oiseihem daika, the ones that do them specifically. It doesn't say the ones that learn them, but rather the ones that do them. We're talking about action. V'loyoid, not only that, elo sha'achar kach, afterwards, even though the verse itself in Torah B'chsav, in the written Torah, it uses the word oiseihem, to do, the ones that do them. Also, this is explained, nisparesh b'Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's explained in the oral law, in the Gemara. And the Gemara emphasizes, we're not talking about ones who learn it, rather, elo lo oiseihem, the ones that do them, whatever them are, and we've decided them are the maisim tevim, the positive deeds. Hainu shazel b'diuk, this is something exact and precise. Okay. End of our understanding of the pasuk.
Sorry, I'm late. Amnon told me we weren't starting until 8. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We'll punish him accordingly after class, Doc. No problem. It's interesting how Doc, he was here on time. V'yadua maimer kver kedushas Marichami Admor. And it's well known, now we're going to see how the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, learns this pasuk, based on Rashi. V'yadua maimer kver kedushas Marichami Admor nasi doreinu b'zeh. It's well known, the statement, the maimer, the Chassidic discourse of the previous Rebbe. Mari v'chami admor. Okay, what does that all mean? If people sometimes, yeah, I mean, we've never really translated, right? I don't know whether anybody in our class knows it either, really. Chaf kuf mem vav ches. I mean, 3 different acronyms, one after the other. Kaf kuf is kveit kedushas, the honor of the Holy One. Mari v'chami. Now the Rebbe used to say this in Yiddish. He'd say der Rebbe dem Schwer, the Rebbe, the father-in-law. Right? Meaning the previous Rebbe is the Rebbe's father-in-law. So he says, my teacher, my father-in-law. Right? Admor. Admor is Adonenu, Mereinu, V'Rabbeinu. It's an acronym for those 3 words. And it means Rebbe. Right? Meaning when that's how a Rebbe is referred to. Okay? So when you say Hasidic Rebbe, so in Hebrew they'd say Admor. Right? Okay? Nasi deReinu, the leader of our generation. Okay, so all of that is referring to the previous Rebbe, and that's how the Rebbe refers to the previous Rebbe all the time. All right. V'yidua maimer kveitzus Marichami Admor Nasi deReinu b'zeh, regarding this, right? Mishabes Parshas v'Yishlach, and this maimer, this Hasidic discourse that the previous Rebbe said was said on Shabbos Parshas v'Yishlach, just like the Rebbe is saying in this maimer. Tafresh Pei Tes, in the year Tafresh Pei Tes. So we're now Tafshin Pei Hey, so 96 years ago. Okay, so figure out the math. So what's that? 1929. Okay, say that? 1929. The previous Rebbe said this. The previous Rebbe was Rebbe from 1920 to 1950. The previous Rebbe. The Sefer Maimarim Kuntrasim, in the collection of his Maimarim called Kuntrasim. There are 3 volumes of Kuntrasim, very, very worthwhile to learn them. Maimarim generally in Lubavitch yeshivas, when boys go to yeshiva after their bar mitzvah, so they start yeshiva when they're 13 or 14, and they'll spend 3 years in what's called Yeshiva Ktana here in Eretz Yisrael, or Masifta in the rest of the world. So they will start their Chassidus class in the morning, will probably start generally with Maimarim from the Kuntrasim of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Those are the most basic place to begin in learning Chassidus. Okay? Shesham Maskil b'Maimer. The Rebbe says something completely out of character for a Maimer in these brackets, but okay, it's amazing, completely out of character for a Maimer, but that's okay. Shesham Maskil b'Maimer Chazal Zeh, that the Maimer begins, the Frierdiker Rebbe's discussion on all this begins with this statement of Rava, Umeisif Tziyun Makarei, and the Rebbe adds a mention of the source of this, B'Brachas Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. This happens to be in the Gemara Brachas in 17a, Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Now the Rebbe says that. That's very rare in a Maimer that the Rebbe will quote the Rebbeim, all of the Rebbeim will quote Maimarim of Chazal, will quote things that the rabbis in the time of the Gemara said all the time. they will very rarely ever tell you where it's from. Sometimes they'll say the book, right? In Bereshis Rabbah it says, we won't tell you where, right?
Wait, so Tzion means what?
Siyun Makara mean at Siyun is a sign, right? Which is interesting. I mean, it's a very versatile word, but the word Siyun means a sign. So Mitsuyonim can be is people who are excellent, but means they're obviously singled out as someone you can look to and learn from, etc. Mitsuyan is excellence, excellent, right? So Tziyun Makar is mentioning the source.
Rabbi, after this ever, did any of the rabbis mention the source in detail?
Very rarely. It's rare enough that the Rebbe is mentioning it here. But the fact that the Rebbe is mentioning here is also completely out of character. This is just a fascinating 2 lines in the middle of a mimer that never happens. Okay, well, it doesn't never happen, right? You can never say it never happens when you're talking about Jews. The Yesh Leimer Remez B'zeh. Why is it that the previous Rebbe happened to mention this Gemara? Ki Yud Zayin, because the Gemara happens to be on page 17a in Brachos. Yud Zayin u Gematria Tov. And the gematria, the numerical value of the word, of the letters, Yud Zayin, is the word Tov, good, canal. Now, interesting enough, if you look at the top of this page, right, the printers of the mimer had the good sense to write the date based on the gematria Tov. What date was this mimer said? On the 17th of Kislev, right? But they wrote Tov Kislev because of what the Rebbe is saying right now, right? The Tov is Yud Zayin is gematria Tov, or Tov is Gematria Yud Zayin. And the previous Rebbe made a point of saying that this is on that page, meaning the good page, so to speak. There's a lot of good pages, but this is an especially good page in Brachos because it happens to be the page of the Gematria of Yud Zayin. Ubezeh Gufa, and in that page itself, but Tov Gufa, Inyan Zeh Kashur Imam and Aleph. It's connected to the first page, the most powerful expression, because we know everything goes after the beginning of something. So the powerful expression of good, which is in that Gemara Brachos, Haschalas in the beginning of the thing. Completely out of character, this parenthetical statement here. Okay. So what does the Friedrich Rebbe say? Umevi al zeh, he brings the following understanding. Okay, now we might think, and this is the last time I'm going to say it this way, because if you learn something improperly, and then you come to the realization that the way you're learning it is improper, so never, ever, ever repeat that pshat again. If you're learning a Gemara, and you said a pshat in your Gemara, you're learning a Mishnah in Mishnah class, and you said a pshat in that Mishnah, then you come into class with Rabbi Chazan, and he learns the Mishnah differently, the pshat that you said, throw it away and never, ever, ever say it again. Why? Well, because you have a pretty powerful connection to that pshat because you thought it up yourself and you worked hard to figure it out. And if you say it again, 10 years down the road, which pshat are you going to remember? The wrong one. Don't remember that one. So throw it away. Don't ever say it again. Right? It's true. Don't say, oh, we said like this, and he said, no, don't say that anymore. This is pshat in the Mishnah. Otherwise, I'll forget at some point which is the right one, because I put a lot of emotional and intellectual energy into the one that ended up not being the right pshat in the Mishnah, or the Gemara, or the Mimer, or whatever it happens to be. So now in this pasuk, I don't want to say the wrong pshat anymore. I say once more in what we thought it might mean, because we haven't heard the right one yet. But we're going to hear what Rashi says, and the Friedrich Rebbe is going to tell us what Rashi says. We thought that Tachlis Chochma Tshuva and Maisim Tevim, the ultimate purpose of Tshuva and Maisim Tevim, is that well, just what I said. The ultimate purpose of Chochma is to come to a state of Tshuva and Maisim Tevim. That the purpose of learning something is to improve as a person in my relationship with the Kadosh Baruch and my relationship with other people, that my deeds will be better, etc. That's what we thought this meant. Now that's a wonderful idea. Okay, but that's not pshat in this pasuk. Right? That's not what it means in this statement of Rava. I'm sorry, that's not what it means. Right? We'll see what it means. Okay, so it's, again, we're saying pshat in Rava's statement based on the pasuk. Umevi al zeh, the Friedrich Rebbe brings the Chochmei Torah. So when we say Chochmah here, we mean learning Torah. The inyan tachlis chochmah, the ultimate. Now, generally, the word tachlis can mean purpose. It can also mean the highest expression of. the tachlis of it. I mean, the highest expression of this reality. So that seems to be what we're saying here, because purpose generally we see as something that leads to something else, right? Even though it doesn't have to, right? But here we're talking about the highest expression of Chochmah, the most powerful expression of learning Torah. Tshuva Maisim Tevim, Hu Kapedish Rashi, is like Rashi says. Now, Rashi says something very different. It's very interesting. Rashi on the Gemara. She'ikara shel Torah, the essence of Torah, and the essence of learning Torah. Sheyeh ima tshuva and maisim tevim, that there should be with it tshuva and maisim tevim. Now, what's the difference between what we thought and what Rashi says? With it means which came first, so to speak. First the tshuva and the maisim tevim, and the Talmud Torah should be with them. It's not that the Talmud Torah leads to them. The Talmud Torah should be with them. In other words, they're already there. Right? In other words, a person, in order to truly express the intellectual enterprise of Talmud Torah, should have already done tshuva. That's very interesting, right? Again, I'm going to say it, I'm going to break my rule, but I don't think I'm breaking the rule, because we're going to understand this more. I would think, even without the pasuk, that the reason I'm learning Torah is to do tshuva. I mean, isn't that what we sort of do around here? Right? Teach Torah, and hopefully people will develop a more sophisticated and deep relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu because they're learning Torah. Isn't that sort of what we do around here? Isn't that what most people do in their life? That's how it's one of the reasons we learn Torah. Okay, so that idea isn't a wrong idea. It's just not what Rav is saying. Rav is saying something else, which evidently is even deeper, even though I don't understand it, and that's exactly what the Rebbe is going to ask. The Rebbe is going to ask, what does this mean? Why is this necessary? Right? So it says that the ultimate expression of Chochmah, which we said is Torah, Friedrich Rebbe told us that, is that it should be learned with tshuva and maisim tevim, in conjunction with. So to speak, which comes first? The tshuva and the maisim tevim come first, then the Talmud Torah is the way it should be. Manyen umedayik b'zeh. So the Alter Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, learns the l'chu'era ein amuvan. At first glance, this is not understood. It's hard to understand. Sharei Torah ikara hi yediya v'asaga b'seichel. Learning Torah, not Torah in general, because Torah includes all sorts of things. Torah also includes mitzvahs, and the idea of mitzvahs isn't understanding. The idea of mitzvahs obviously is to do them. But learning Torah, what's learning Torah about? Well, it's fairly obvious. Learning Torah is about yediya, knowledge, hasaga, comprehension, b'seichel, in one's intellect. Shuin in a chokhmah. That's what chokhmah is. That's what chokhmah is, a power of intellect. So I don't see with chokhmah. I don't feel with chokhmah. I understand with chokhmah. Right? And that's a particular expression of reality, a particular expression of our lives. It's limited, right? It's able to relate to certain things, and it's very useful to use relative to those things. Intellect is obviously a wonderful, wonderful power to have, and we're blessed with this thing called intellect. But of course, not to worship intellect and think intellect is all that there is, and if something doesn't fit into the box of intellect, it doesn't exist. That's a pretty silly idea. There's all sorts of things that intellect can't relate to and intellect doesn't understand. Why? Because they're not ideas. Intellect only understands ideas. Intellect doesn't understand emotions. Emotion is different than intellect. Higher, lower, it's different. Right? So now, someone who has experienced an emotion can talk about it intellectually. It's called poetry, right? I mean, when people who write poetry, what are they trying to emit from the person? I mean, not just poetry, but also poetry, right? An emotion from the person reading the poem very often, right? Explain, love is not love which alters when an alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken, right? So when Shakespeare is talking about love, he's using intellectual words to try to explain an emotion. Now, who will understand that? Who will understand what he's talking about? Someone who's experienced love. What about a person who's never experienced love, God forbid? Won't have a clue what he's talking about.
Explaining a tropical storm.
I don't know what they'll think he is explaining, but they won't understand whatever he's talking about, right? A tempest, you write, a tropical storm. Right, okay. Because love isn't an idea, it's an emotion. So if I've experienced the emotion, then I can talk about it intellectually. That makes sense. Now, I don't know exactly what he means because, after all, it's talking about an emotion. And that's rather subjective. Whereas intellect is objective. Real intellect is objective reality. 2 + 2 is 4. That's real intellect. It has nothing to do with me. I want it. I feel that it should be 5. Good. Go in your little rubber room and have a good life. But 2 + 2 is either 11 or 4. In base 3, it's 11. In base every other, well, actually, I know. It's either 11, 10, or 4. If you're in base 4, then it's 10. If you're in base 3, it's 11. And if you're any other base, it's 4. That's the way it works. There is no other answer to that question. That's an objective fact. Okay. It's a convention. I mean, we made it up. There's no absolute notion of 2. There's just a bunch of 1s. But you and I have this convention called, if you put 1 and another one together, we call it 2 or do or dos or whatever we call it. Right? Okay. We don't have to. We just do. It makes sense. It works. Now, where do we learn how to do that? The Torah does it. The Torah uses numbers to describe things. In other words, you can group things, you can group all those 1s together and give them a name that makes sense. So when you're counting animals, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's my sir. He's holy. Put him over there. That's what you do when you're counting your cows. You give that cow to the kohen. Okay. It goes to the base of Mikdash. So numbers are real, but a true intellect. I mean, you'll probably, mathematicians like they get happy when you say this. Probably the most powerful and truest expression of intellect is probably math, because there's just there's no subjective reality whatsoever, and it has nothing to do with anything except playing around with interesting objective reality. Okay, fine. So that's intellect is objective reality. So intellect understands certain things very well. What can't you do with intellect? Explain the color orange to someone who never was blessed with the power of sight. Can't do it. Why? It's not an idea. It's a physical experience. It's a visual experience. And if you haven't had that visual experience, you won't know what it is. Once you have had that visual experience, so then it starts resonating in your intellect also, so you can talk about it. So two designers in Italy can sit and discuss about a particular shade of orange that they'd like this cloth to be. I get it. They can talk about that. Why? Well, they've seen it. They've seen orange. But if you've never seen orange, then orange doesn't exist in your life. You can't think about it. How can you think about it? If you can't see, you can be taught 2 + 2 is 4. No problem. But you can't be taught what orange is, because it's not an idea. So intellect is good, it's amazing, but it's limited. It's a limited power that is able to do certain things, and that's why it's very important not to worship it. Right? Very often some people think that if I can't understand it, then it doesn't exist. That's a rather silly position. Right? Because there's all sorts of things that intellect can't understand, but they still exist. Right? Because they just don't fit into the box called intellect. One of those things is called God. I can't prove him in a laboratory. That doesn't mean he doesn't exist. I can't prove love in a laboratory either. Why? It's not something you can prove in a laboratory. You can prove that what you and I call love will produce certain physiological responses in a person who's hooked up to certain wires, and someone they love walks in the room, so we can measure that will bring about some sort of physiological change in the person that's all wired up. That's true. Prove to me that was love. Who says it's love? It's the physiological response. It's this thing called love. Just, a bunch of things moving, physiological activity in there. No love, no such thing. Okay? Because after all, you could do exactly the same thing to a person who's having a spiritual experience. I would imagine you would be able to measure a physiological change in that person while they are experiencing a spiritual experience. To the person that doesn't believe in God, you haven't proven God to them. It's an emotional reaction. There's nothing to do with anything. You and I will say, well, he's having a spiritual experience. Wow, that's really amazing. Right? Someone who doesn't believe in God will explain it a different way. So someone who doesn't believe in love will explain that physiological reaction a different way. can't prove love in a laboratory. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I think we all believe in love. Hope we do. All right? Okay. So that's what intellect is, the Rebbe says. Intellect is understanding things. Therefore, what's the mitzvah of learning Torah? He shaloi made Torah, that a person should learn Torah ba'ofen, in such a way, shemavina betam v'svar sechlis, that he understands it with reason and with an intellectual explanation. If I'm learning Torah Shabbal Peh, Torah Shabbat is different. The written Torah is different. But if I'm learning Torah Shabbal Peh, which is what we spend most of our day learning, so if I'm learning a Mishnah and I don't understand anything about the Mishnah, if I understand something, so I've done something. But if I don't understand anything about the Mishnah, nothing, so I have not fulfilled the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Why? Well, because the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is to understand something, and I don't understand it. Right? So then I haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. If I put tefillin on the table, and I don't put them on my arm, but I'm relating to the tefillin, I'm having a relationship with the tefillin, or I put them on my leg, right? Did I fulfill the mitzvah? No. Am I somehow in the world of tefillin? Yeah, I'm in the world of tefillin. I'm hanging around with my tefillin. I'm looking at my tefillin. I'm kissing. I'm putting it in the box and out of the box and in the box and out of the box. And I love that little click that the box makes when I close the box. Such a cool little click, click. Oh, I love that click. Right, okay, so I'm opening it and closing it and clicking and way, and the guy behind me is going crazy. Would stop messing around, just put your tefillin on, but I don't know how, so I can't do it. Okay, so if I learn a mission, I don't understand it. It's not that I'm doing bad stuff, but I haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, because the mitzvah of Talmud Torah in Torah Shabbal Peh, learning the oral law. What's the oral law about? Explaining reality, including the written law, but all sorts of stuff. So if I don't understand it, so I haven't done what I'm supposed to do, because it's all about understanding it. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Yeah, that's intellect. Okay. So then the Rebbe asks, Uma inyan chochma v'avona v'asoga. So then what in the world is the connection between chochma, wisdom, havona, understanding, hasaga, comprehension, l'tshuva and ma'asim tovim? To tshuva and ma'asim tovim, to having a powerful relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu and a deep sensitivity of God's presence in my life. That's called tshuva. Ma'asim tovim, good deeds, which we assume are mitzvahs. She'enim shayachim la'avana v'asaga dafka, that these things are not necessarily relevant to intellectual understanding. So why would my intellectual understanding of the Torah be the most powerful expression of that is only when I have a deep and sophisticated relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu? What's one got to do with the other? That deep, sophisticated relationship isn't necessarily based on intellect, and my intellectual understanding doesn't seem to be necessarily based on that deep relationship. I mean, I can't understand a Mishnah if I don't know who God is. Why not? It's just an idea, right? Okay. So what's the connection? The Rebbe asks.
Sorry. So here, the phrase "ma'asim tovim" doesn't necessarily refer to good deeds. It more so refers to a relationship between the person and God.
Well, it's mitzvahs. Ma'asim tovim generally relates to mitzvahs,
which is a relationship with God, you're saying.
Or it can also be a relationship with you,
Right.
because there's all sorts of mitzvahs that are relevant to our relationship. But yes, the all-encompassing light of that is also my relationship with God. Right?
Right, and pretty much you're saying that has nothing to do with seichel. Like seichel is when you understand and can comprehend something. When
Right,
you ask
that's the
someone to do a
question.
deed, when you ask someone to do a deed, it's not necessarily based on logic.
Right. Or intellectual understanding, even if it's a logical thing to do. Right? Does the person have to be brilliant to do it? And the Rebbe is going to continue asking the question in the next 3 lines about seeing very, very simple people who are not intellectuals. Doesn't mean they're stupid, but they're not intellectuals. They don't work through intellect. There's all sorts of people like that who are very smart, but just not intellectuals.
Rabbi,
Hmm?
if somebody barely understands or doesn't understand Mishnah, is there a reason for them to learn?
Yeah, because sooner or later they're going to come to understand it. I mean, the guy in first year medical school who just doesn't get what's going on right now, tell him after a week, say, well, okay, just forget it. I say, no, just hang around. Sooner or later it's going to click. But right now you're having a harder time than that guy. Okay. It's not anything else. Sooner or later we'll figure it out. I mean, and relative to Torah, we know that because God gave us a mitzvah to learn it. So God didn't give me a mitzvah to put on tefillin, not create people with arms. Right? We all have arms. I mean, there can be a person who doesn't have an arm, but in general, humankind has arms. Okay, so God said put tefillin on them. He didn't say put tefillin on our prinkles, because we don't have prinkles. I don't know what a prinkle is, but let's say there's this thing called a prinkle. Well, we don't have one. So God didn't say put tefillin on your prinkles and we don't have one. Right? Oh, so he said learn Torah and understand it. So I guess I can, because he told me to. Right? He didn't tell me to jump to the moon. He told me to do things I can do. Some of them are harder, some of them are easier, but he told us things we can do. Because the Rebbe is asking the question, the Rashi's explanation of the verse is the ultimate expression of the intellectual activity of learning Torah is that it's done within the context of tshuva and mitzvah doing. And that's what the Rebbe is asking about. I don't understand. Not that tshuva is a bad thing, it's great. But what's the connection between one and the other? Why is my intellectual understanding dependent on whether or not I feel a deep connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu? So the websites don't understand the connection because intellect is one thing and that relationship is something else.
Not to knock the question, but to me it's like you're saying that ima, meaning you should have one thing and you should have another thing. Like
Ima means it's already there.
Connected.
It's already there.
But is the pasuk saying that they're necessarily connected and that one thing leads to the other? It seems to me that
no, it doesn't. It not necessarily leading to. We thought it. Tachlis generally means the purpose of A is B, and Rashi is telling us no. The ultimate expression of A is when it's with B. They're connected in it's not a pasuk. I'm sorry, it's Rava's statement. Rava connects them in his statement, right? So they're definitely connected. You're right, they both have value separately. No doubt about that. Learning Torah has value, tshuva has value, Ma'asim Tevim have value, but Rava put them all together. And you would think it means that the purpose of doing A is to come to B and C. And Rashi says no. The ultimate expression of A is when it's with B and C. And I don't see the connection between B and C and A. B and C is good deeds, and A is intellect. And what's one got to do with the other? Now, look at the next three lines. The Rebbe's going to talk about people who are not intellectuals, have a very basic understanding of reality. They're not stupid, but they're not intellectuals. Right? There's a difference between the two. I hate to bring up American politics. There were a lot of people who used to call George Bush stupid. It's not the kid. Not the Tati, the kid, the second one. He used to say he was stupid. Okay, he had that southern accent, which some people think sounds stupid. I mean, whether it is or not, I don't know. Okay, but why'd they think he was stupid? Well, he's not an intellectual. But if you ever heard him in an interview, he's not stupid. He can maintain and express clearly a lot of information. And anything you asked him, he would answer. Right? He could do a press conference and answer questions in a sophisticated way. But he wasn't an intellectual. He didn't work that way. So it bothered certain people in America because they like intellectuals for whatever reason. And they think you have to be an intellectual to be smart. That's not true. It's just not true. There are people who work through intellect, and they're just that kind of person. They work through intellect in their life. And there are other people who work more through emotion or deeds. They're a doer. They're going to get things done more than contemplate them. Okay. And everybody's necessary. Everybody plays their part. So now the Rebbe is talking about people who are clearly not intellectuals and have a very basic understanding of things, even though their understanding is unbelievably true. It's very deep in its truth. But they couldn't explain it to you in a sophisticated way. In the continuation of that discussion, the Friedrich Rebbe brings the following discussion. The notion of tshuva, meaning a very powerful sensitivity to God's presence in our lives. There is by simple people. She'enim bala yediyah v'askola, and they're not people of great intellectual knowledge. V'heim mis'arerim b'yoser b'tshuva, but they're aroused in a very real way to tshuva. Ubeichin b'mar nafsham, and they cry with the bitterness of their soul in their desire to be closer to God. Kamesha anu royim b'muchash, as we see in actuality. B'muchash means with my senses. A chush is a sense, the sense of smell, the sense of sight, the sense of hearing. So chush is also to have a sensitivity to something, right? He has a chush for this. He's good at it. Okay, but muchash means actually. We see in actuality. The miras tehillim shalahem, that they're saying of tehillim, who believe nishbars with a broken heart. Now, who's the Rebbe describing? He's describing the simple Jew who goes to shul, sits down, opens up a book of Tehillim before he davens Shachris or before he davens Mincha, and he says Tehillim for 20 minutes with a broken heart, and he's crying tears of tshuva. If you were to ask this guy to say over some sophisticated idea about reality, a pshat in a Gemara, something from a Maimer Chassidus, a diuk in Shulchan Aruch, right? Look up something. Could he do? No, can't do that. He's just a simple, what do they say, of the earth? What salt of the earth sort of guy, right? Okay, serious guy, but he's not an intellect. And yet, what do you see very, very clearly? Powerful tshuva, powerful connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so that's what the Rebbe's at. The Friedrich Rebbe is asking the question, what's the connection between intellect and tshuva? They don't seem to have anything to do with each other. Of course, one can lead to the other. And of course, they're both important in their own right. But why is Rava connecting them in such a way that there's no such thing as a proper expression of intellect without tshuva? They're different realities. I wouldn't think I need tshuva to understand. And these people show us I don't necessarily need a deep understanding in order to have a very powerful expression of tshuva. Now, because the yeshiva has moved to where we have moved, I can't say walk out the front door, take a right and then a left, and you'll see 3 shuls on your way to the shuk full of these guys, the guys that the Rebbe's explained. But from our old building, you would have been able to do that. Because around Machne Yehuda shuk, at 12:30, 1 o'clock every day, there would be a bunch of guys who work very hard for a living, right? And their hands are dirty and their clothes are dirty, and they would all meet there in these shuls to daven mincha. And I guess it must have been one was a Tunisian shul, and one was an Algerian shul, and one was a Moroccan shul, because there would always be one guy out front of each shul looking for the 10th guy of each minyan. Now, why they didn't just daven together, they have 27 people, I don't know, but probably because this was Algerian and this was Tunisian and this is Moroccan, and God forbid I should ever step into a shul of Algerians. That would be the end of me. So my family would never let me live that down. So I don't know, but they'd always be standing out, right? And sometimes they'd be saying Asiri, 10th. Sometimes these Sfardim, like real Sfardim, the real salt of the earth Sfardim, the people who really believe in God, not like us Ashkenazi, right? So these they'd be out there and they'd be saying center in Yiddish, just because center means 10th, and everybody knows that. So they'd be saying center. You look at this guy, right? Center. You didn't hear that from his grandmother, that's for sure. Right? Okay, they're looking for a 10th. And you go in there, you look, simple, mamish, straight, real guys, work hard for a living. They're there davening mincha. What are they doing before? They're saying Tehillim. So they'll be saying Tehillim, waiting for the minyan to start. Then they're going to go back to work. Okay, so those guys, you're going to go in there and expect some unbelievably sophisticated expression of a taisvis? No, it's not happening. Maybe the rabbi in the shul, I don't know, but not this chevra. But is there tshuva there? Oh, these guys are real. They live it, they believe it. They're the real thing. Okay, so that's the Rebbe's question. Now, we said there's going to be 2 maimarim here. We started with the question, we're not going to answer this question for a page and a half, because the Rebbe, with the next word, amnam, which means however, the Rebbe is going to now go into a tangent relative to the notion of simcha. The next page and a half is going to explain the centrality of simcha in Avodas Hashem. All right, that's why most people learn this mimer, even though the answer to this question is also amazing. That's the end. And that's going to help you guys a lot because you sit and learn Torah all day, and you're going to have, the Rebbe's going to give you a very clear understanding as to what that's all about and why it has to be with Tshuva and Ma'aseh David. But that's later in the mimer. Right now, this the Rebbe sets off on a tangent. And it's an absolutely fascinating tangent. Inyan ha-meridus shebetshuva. This notion of bitterness in tshuva, because we said they were crying with bitter tears, and the bitter tears were their pain from being distant from God. This matter of bitterness is not relevant in our generation, this last generation. Daughter the ikvus of the Mashiach, the generation that is on the heels of Mashiach. Our generation, this notion of bitterness in our relationship with God is not relevant. It's really astounding. The Rebbe is going to give us 3 reasons in the next page and a half as to why tshuva mimeriris, from bitterness, is not the way to go for our generation. The first reason is right here, and then we'll be able to explain something. Kevin Shebederenu, Rabbi said this is very cryptic. I'll explain how the teachers of our generation have taught us what the Rebbe means here. Kevin Shebederenu ein lanu kayach le'inyan meridus. We don't have the power for the matter of meridus. Keep reading a little. We'll come back to that. There's a period in the next line. Utzrichin. What do we need? Hischazkus, strengthening. V'hisoididus yesera, and a lot of encouragement. Positive encouragement. Therefore, in our generation, the work of tshuva is dafka b'simcha, joy, not merirus, bitterness. Okay, so now, it happens to be that in Igeres HaTshuva of the Alter Rebbe, right, in Tanya, so Tanya has 5 parts, right, that book called Tanya, only the beginning of the book is called, the first part is called Tanya, the whole book is called Likutei Amarim, a collection of sayings. The third part of that book is called Igeres HaTshuva, the Epistle on Tshuva, where the Alter Rebbe talks about how to do tshuva, and the Alter Rebbe talks about 2 very distinct aspects of tshuva. Tshuva mimeridus, and that's why the Rebbe is using that word. Tshuva from bitterness, so to speak. Tshuva misimcha. One is called the lower level of tshuva, that's bitterness. The other is called the upper level, the higher level of tshuva, that's tshuva misimcha. We're going to see it a little later in this mimer also, but what's the basic difference? Tshuva mimeridus is breaking our heart, becoming embittered by virtue of the fact that we are distant from Hashem and we might have done things that distance ourselves from Him. And our heart is broken by virtue of that. Merirus, bitterness. Simcha is the incredible joy that a person experiences by virtue of the fact that at any moment, no matter where he is, he's able to completely reconnect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will accept us with open arms and hug us and kiss us as we come back. That's tshuva misimcha. That's called upper level tshuva. Okay. So the Rebbe just said something really quite fascinating. In our generation, that lower level isn't shaykh. Won't work. Why? We don't have the koyach for it. What does that mean? So the explanation that's given basically by everybody who learns this mimer, who knows more than the rest of us, the explanation is as follows. There's something else that might happen if I focus on the negative in my life. It's called atzvus, depression, the single most powerful weapon that the Yetzer Hara has. Right? The Yetzer Hara wants to get me to do something that God doesn't want me to do, get me to feel a little down, and I'm putty in his hands. It's so easy for him to make me do all sorts of things that I'm really not interested in doing at my moments of clarity. Depression is a focus on self. Merirus is, what's the focus of Merirus? Merirus is a proper and real way of coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by being bothered by the fact that I have distanced myself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the focus is on the fact that I want to be close to Him, and I've done something that has distanced myself. But it's not about I'm bad or I'm terrible. The pain is as a result of my distance from someone I want to be close to. That's merirus. Depression is all about me. Right? What's an example in real life? Okay, Ruvain hit Shimon, heaven forfend. Okay. Ruvain experiences merirus, bitterness. Ruvain is very upset that he did something that he shouldn't have done. And what is it that he did? He caused Shimon pain. And he feels broken by virtue of the fact that he caused Shimon pain. And why is he feeling so powerfully Shimon's pain? Well, because he was the source of that pain. So he feels very, very broken. Okay, that's a good reaction. That's a positive reaction. Still merirus. Okay, but what's another possible reaction of Ruvain to have hit Shimon? Oy vey, I'm a bad person. I'm no good. Oy vey, I hit Shimon. I'm terrible. I'm no good. Oy vey. Oy, poor Ruvain. What's Ruvain's focus? Who is Ruvain thinking about? Ruvain. Who is not in any way, shape, or form involved in this discussion that Ruvain's having with himself. Shimon couldn't care less about Shimon. All he cares about is Ruvain. Oh, I'm no good. Shimon, I couldn't care less. So now, interesting enough, why did I hit Shimon? Why did Ruvain hit Shimon in the first place? Because all Ruvain cares about is Ruvain, and he didn't think about Shimon. What's his response to this, which theoretically is a response to try to fix himself, to be completely focused on Reuven and forget about Shimon? Well, that was the reason he did the Avera in the first place. So he didn't get anywhere. Right? He's in exactly the same place. Now he's just beating himself up instead of Shimon. That's not tshuva. That's not going to work. Oh, so that's depression. Now, there's something called clinically depressed, which is a disease, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that level of depression that we can all allow ourselves to slip into, but if we're careful and we realize what's really going on, we won't, because we won't allow ourselves to focus on ourselves. We'll allow ourselves to focus on the bigger picture. Okay? So you do something wrong, chas v'shalom, but you know, I mean, I know you guys don't, but I just want you to realize there are people in the world who actually make mistakes in life. It's hard for us guys to understand this, but there are such people. I read about it in a book once. There are people who aren't perfect. Okay, so those people, nebuch, poor people, they should just hang around us and be like us, right? Because okay, so those people who make mistakes, I actually know some of them. I actually brush the teeth of one of them. Every day, twice, with my electric toothbrush. And if I'm a good boy, I water pick too. So that guy, when he does a mistake, there's two reactions he could have. I'm no good. Or, now, I'm going to have to work on that at some point. We'll figure out how. That's part of the tshuva process also. But and Chassidus talks about this all the time, what's the most useful response to that mistake that I just made? Let's say it doesn't involve another person. Right? Okay, I just did something, so to speak, negative. So go do something positive. Right? You just did something negative? So you can either sit down, rip your garments, put ashes on your head, and feel sorry for yourself for 2 hours. Or you can say, you know what, I just did something negative, I better do something positive. I'm going to go get some stuff, I'm going to make a phone call to someone to make them feel. I'll send someone a voice note on WhatsApp, someone I'm never in touch with, and I say, you know what, I'm sitting here in Yerushalayim, and I was just thinking about you, and I just want you to know that I think you're a great guy, and I miss you, and I love you, and I'm looking forward to see you again. Okay, took me 8 seconds. Took me about a minute and a half to find him because he's way down on WhatsApp. He's like buried under everybody who I actually talk to all the time. Okay. But there's a search, right? So you search for Ruvain and you find Ruvain and you send Ruvain a quick message. Ruvain, we haven't been in touch for ages. Just thinking of you and hope everything's okay. Love you. Okay. Ruvain opens up his WhatsApp. Might be 7 hours later because he might be asleep when you send it. Okay. What's Ruvain's response? He frowns or smiles when he sees that. So he's going to smile, right? Wow, that is so nice. Okay, you just made a Jew feel good. Good, great. You did something positive in the world. That's a reasonable response to something negative, right? I mean, if I were, God forbid, not I, Reuven, steal, it's always Reuven, poor Reuven, right? Steals $100 from person. What's the most obvious response immediately? Give it back. Give it back and you're done, right? You're going to have to worry, you're going to have to work at some point on the fact that you're such a nudnik that you would actually take it in the first place. What's wrong with you? You're off your rocker. Okay, but you immediately did something that was positive. You gave it back. Right, okay. Don't take the $100 and give it to stuck it to someone else. That's positive, but better give it back to the guy you took it from. Okay. So immediately do something positive. And that's how Chassidus relates to tshuva in general. Now, there might be a time when the Rebbe's going to talk about this later in the mind. There might be a time where I have to sit down and make a certain accounting of where I'm holding and what has to be fixed and what's working and what's not working, etc. 100%. But if you're running a business and you make a mistake in business, well, I assume that what you're going to try to do the next day when you walk into the office is to go, run the business properly, as opposed to gather everybody together in the boardroom and sit and mourn the fact that yesterday the business made a mistake. Okay, the business is making another very serious mistake right now because the business isn't making any money right now because you're all sitting in the boardroom mourning the mistake you had yesterday instead of getting it together to go do what you have to do to make money today as opposed to what happened yesterday. Just go fix it. Okay, now depression, atzvus, is going to stop me from doing that because all I'm going to do is start feeling sorry for myself and then I'm going to probably go get a chocolate bar or something along those lines. Might be worse, but we'll just say it's a chocolate bar. Right? With nuts and raisins, probably, pretty thick milk chocolate. Probably going to constrict your throat. It's so sweet. Like, this is good. Of course, you're on a diet, so you'll feel even worse after you eat the chocolate bar. So this is great. This is really productive. Right? Okay, it's not productive. Atzvus is the single worst thing imaginable because all it does is push me into myself and I become completely self-absorbed. Merirus is the opposite of that. But the Rebbe says the first reason, we'll stop here, we'll go further tomorrow. The first reason as to why it is that we have to do tshuva misimcha, the Rebbe says, is because we do the level of tshuva mimerirus, which is a proper way of doing tshuva and works if you do it right. We'll do it wrong. If we focus on the negative, we'll do it wrong and we'll sink into depression because we're so focused on ourselves. We'll just focus on ourselves more, and the source of the Aveira was that I'm focusing on myself. The reason I did this thing that I have to do tshuva for is because I'm focused on myself. So now I'm just focusing on myself more, and I'm sinking into a deeper hole, and there's no end to it, and it doesn't work. So don't go there, the Rebbe says. That's the first reason why in our generation. Now that encouragement is not only something that we give other people. Interestingly enough, that's also basically how education works today. We don't rap kids on the knuckles anymore. It just doesn't work. It used to work, right? I mean, evidently it worked because, people did it forever, right? Pretty, boom, got the answer right, boom, okay. It doesn't work today. Just pushes the kid away. It's not interested, right? One of the things that, parenting, all of you, Bezrat Hashem, are future parents or past parents. Your future grandparents, or not future grandparents, future great-grandparents. So one of the things they say about raising children today, and it's definitely true and it works, never say to your son, "Oh, you're such a good boy, you cleaned up the room." Don't say that to him. So what's the subliminal message in that statement?
You're a bad boy if you don't.
If you're a bad boy, if you don't clean up the room. He's not a bad boy. He's never a bad boy. Does he do bad things? Yeah, he does bad things. He's not a bad boy. He's a good boy. He's always a good boy. Even when he's doing bad things, he's a good boy. He's just a good boy doing bad things. Okay, so what do you say? And this is real. It's real. You can have kids develop this sensitivity because it works. Oh, wow. What a good room cleaner-upper. You did a great job. Well done. But if you say, "Good boy, you cleaned up your room," he hears that yesterday when he didn't, he was a bad boy. He's never a bad boy. He's always good. He just does things that aren't so good sometimes, like all of us. And if we do something that's not so good, that doesn't mean we're bad. It means we did something not good. And in reality, we're actually good. And that's why that thing that we just did is what Rabbi Dr. Tursky writes about his father saying to him all the time, pas nicht. When you would do something, it's not befitting who you are for you to do that. Pas nicht. Yiddish thing is, it doesn't pass, meaning you do that? That's not you. You're so much better than that. As opposed to, oh, look how bad you are, God forbid. Bad boy. He's never a bad boy. Neither are you. No one in this room is a bad boy. We do things that aren't in line with who we really are. Oh, so we should correct that. But our way of correcting that is realizing who we really are, encouraging ourselves to be closer to who we really are, as opposed to beating ourselves up for being such a jerk, which we are now and then. But you know what? I don't think you would walk up to another person. You know, you're walking outside, you're in gun soccer, and you see, I'll stop in a minute. You're in gun soccer and you see some guy who looks like he hasn't quite had the advantages that you've had relative to learning a little Torah. So you go up to him and you say, hi, how you doing? Oh, fine. What's your name? John. Hi, John. Where are you from? Baltimore. Oh, John, you know, you're living in abject darkness, John. You're just such a jerk and a fool. I mean, look at you. Did you put on fillin today, you idiot? You probably didn't even put on fillin, you fool.
I heard David saying that.
You're picking on Amnon. You're picking on David. I don't know. Doc, you're picking on everybody today, right? So, you know, you're using age for improper advantage here, Doc. Right? So you'd go up to him and say all these things. Of course you wouldn't, right? I mean, that is not exactly going to bring him closer to anything you'd like him to be close to. You'll probably go, hi, how you doing? You know, and you'll have a nice positive conversation with him. Okay. Because you'd never say to another person, you idiot, you jerk, you fool, you moron. Well, there is one person you say it to all the time. Same guy whose teeth you brush. Doesn't work for him. Why do you think it's going to work for you? Doesn't work when we say it to ourselves either. We know it doesn't work when we say it to ourselves. That doesn't mean we don't get caught there, but we know it doesn't work. I just sort of dig the hole a little deeper. Doesn't work. And I know it doesn't work because if I said it to someone else, he'd look at me. You're a taka moron. Right? Oh, we better be careful. There's a fire alarm. This is a what we collected, a recorded message in a language that no one in the building understands. If you don't react to this, you will die within 2 minutes. But of course, none of you understand this, so I don't know whether this message is actually of any use. But it sounds good. It has a nice little beep before. Oh, here we go again. Be careful, you're all going to die, God forbid. But I'm saying it in a language you don't understand, so this is really of no use whatsoever. So the teachers will run out the door and the students will all die inside. Oh, isn't that great? What a great message. Who put this thing? It's so bizarre. Anyway, okay, let's stop. So I can say that that message is a fool and an idiot and a jerk and stop because the message has no feelings and don't worry about it. But those things we say to ourselves, very, very unhelpful. And that's atzus. That's not mariris. Mariris is not telling myself I'm a jerk. Mariris is feeling the pain that my neshama feels because I've distanced myself from the Eibishter. And that's real, and that can work. But for us it won't, because we'll mess it up. Manyen, lo? So it has to be positive, the Rebbe says. Simcha, encouragement. Who? Yourself also. You made a mistake? Go do something positive. You made a mistake? Open up a sefer. Learn 5 lines of Torah. Make a phone call, make a Jew feel good. Say some Tehillim. Give some tzedakah. Do something positive. We all make mistakes. Dr. Rebbe in chapter 40, 41 of Tanya says someone who thinks that, someone who gets very, very upset about doing an Aveira. So Dr. Rebbe says, well, who do you think you are? You think you're a tzaddik, you're not going to do an Aveira? I understand. What's wrong with you? You really think you're not going to make a mistake in your life? What's wrong with you? Well, no, that doesn't mean that we don't take the mistakes seriously and try to fix them. Right? We can't can't become someone who's, okay, it doesn't matter because I make mistakes. No, it matters. Try not to. But it's going to happen.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I got a couple of points. Couple of points. I'll say the second one first and the first one second.